This episode is brought to you by Morty, Rizova, Recon, and Patreon supporters like you. Supporting our sponsors supports our work. This year, we're hosting Recon, the Reality Escape convention, virtually, so that we can bring our entire global community together. Our team has decided to alternate 1 year in person, 1 year virtual, and this year we are doing it online.
We had such a fantastic time at the first in-person Recon, and we wanted to make sure that our friends from around the world who maybe couldn't manage to come in person are still able to enjoy Recon with all of the variety of speakers and guests that we have.
And that's exactly what we're doing. Recon has a variety of ticket types to meet your needs, and the basic ticket is free. No tricks. We want our global community at Recon, and we hope to see each and every one of you there August 19th and 20th, 2023. You can learn more at realityescapecon.com. Details in the show notes. Tickets are on sale now. Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod, your lifeline when you need a getaway from the real world. I'm David Spira, alongside my co-host, PG Law. Together, we're exploring immersive gaming from all angles, and we'll be joined by guests who really know their stuff. Today's guest is Matthew DuPlessie, founder and CEO of both Level99 and Wits. Since 2004, his companies have been delivering real-life immersive worlds and games with incredible production value that few have rivaled, even as the space has become more mature. Welcome, Matthew.
Thanks, David. Really great to talk again.
It's always a pleasure. I first became exposed to your work very early on after we had started Room Escape Artist. We met up with Professor Scott Nicholson at the Syracuse Wits, and he had played already, but it was our first time meeting. He was a professor at Syracuse at the time, and he really wanted us to see these games. And we were pretty shocked by the experience that we had in a very positive way. I would say it took us a while to really parse everything out of those experiences. And I've played Wits so many times over the years since. So it's been interesting to experience those games as my level of experience and awareness has increased.
Yeah, I think Wits predates some of the earliest escape rooms. Is that correct?
All of them.
As far as I know. I mean, I know there's a difference of recording on when the first dates were, but I think the conventional wisdom is Scrap in Japan was around 2007, when some folks were really getting into some fun ideas in 2008, 9, 10. It didn't really come to the US till after that, but I guess we were a little bit ahead of it in 2004.
I would say well ahead of it. And I think that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, David tried to describe Wits to me, and honestly, I had to go play it to see what he was talking about exactly, because it is very escape room-like, but not exactly. So how would you describe what Wits is?
Yeah, I don't think it could have been exactly, because I had no concept of what an escape room was. They didn't exist in the physical sense, and I had never played one of the kind of video game version of what the origins of escape rooms may have come from. So it was really made up for me out of the theme park world. I had spent my early career doing design and engineering for clients like Disney and the like, wanted to start something. Basically, I think if you had given me $3 billion as a kid and said, go build your own Disney World, I would have said, great, that's what I want to do. But since no one will give a kid $3 billion, it was like, well, how can we shrink this down to the smallest microcosm of a theme park that we could come up with? How can I fit it in one tiny retail storefront, something that maybe I could actually raise the money for and design and engineer and make happen? So the scale, it just has to be much, much smaller. So Wits came about as kind of a series of question and answers to myself on how to do that. It's like, okay, well, we can't make a whole theme park. but we could make one really cool ride. Well, we can't really make a ride, so maybe it'll be more like a show or an experience. Okay, if it's going to be an experience, we put it in one retail storefront, but then most theme park things are 2 or 3 minutes long. Nobody's going to pay enough money for that. How do I make it longer? Oh, we should add puzzles. We should add puzzles, and that'll keep people there for 30, 45, maybe an hour. And it was just this logical progression of how do you make a viable business out of this?
That's a really interesting journey.
What took your head to puzzles as a way to keep people occupied as opposed to, I don't know, the type of stuff that you find at like science exploratoriums or like a playground?
Yeah, it's a great question because that stuff is fun too, right? And a theatrical experience can keep you engrossed for a couple of hours without solving any puzzles. And a movie can keep you engrossed. But for me, it was about making the player the protagonist of the story. It was trying to be a little bit of a different, not a passive experience. Where, for example, our first Five Wits attraction, which was called Tomb, opened in the Fenway in Boston back in 2004. And it was like, yeah, you could have built an ancient Egyptian pharaoh's tomb that was like just a show, like a dinner theater. And you would passively sit and watch, or maybe even walk through and watch actors play roles and stuff happen around you.
Animatronics.
Sure, yeah, animatronics. But all of those things, animatronics, live actors, these things cost money. And I was trying to build something that was a relatively inexpensive, viable business for a little scrappy startup. I put my life savings into Five Wits, $1,000. That was my entire life savings at that time. Now, to be fair, we went out and raised more money from some other folks who had more resources than I did. But we were really trying to do this on the cheap, as in like ordering parts off eBay, hauling my desk chair out of the neighboring D'Angelo's dumpster in order to get this business open as affordably as we can. So if you want to run a model that has low recurring costs, you can't spend 6 figures upfront on the animatronics. You don't want a big payroll repeating with a bunch of live actors. You need something that will run in a fairly automated fashion over and over, one show, one experience after another, giving a high quality experience without a staff of 100 people. So that's for me where it led to, all right, the person, they need to be the center of the show themselves rather than them watching something going on. And if they're going to be the center of the show themselves, what are they doing? What do they actually get to do for 30 or 45 minutes or an hour? They're not going to be content to stand there and look at the set in a tiny retail storefront. There's got to be something where they get to evaluate and make decisions and play and participate and get physical and get mental with the setting around them. So let's build some games. Some could be summer camp type, like ropes coursey stuff. Some of it can be, let's do some mental games and you work as a team and you solve the puzzles. Was the thought progression if I could reconstruct it 20 years later.
That's a very interesting progression. And to describe this a little bit for folks who haven't had a chance to play a Five Wits game, I'm curious to hear your reaction to the way that I described this. The way that I often describe Five Wits to people who haven't had a chance to play it is if you imagine an escape room, but presented the way that Disney might make it in an alternate reality, where there's a lot of love and attention put into a beautiful, playful set, and it is designed for higher throughput, where every 10 to 15 minutes or so, you're able to put a new team in. And so if there are 4 rooms, A, B, C, and D, you have people in all 4 of those rooms. And when the team from D exits, the team in room C can advance to room D, B to C, A to B, and then a new team can be let into the experience. And through that, you experience a story, you solve puzzles, you do a little bit of climbing or crawling, a little bit of physicality. And that's the way that a Five Wits adventure feels to me.
That's pretty good. I took some notes. I think I'll use some of that. Thank you. That's really helpful. It is both the set and the throughput level. Mm-hmm. I started as a set guy. So people think as a mechanical engineer, you go to work for Disney, it's because you want to design roller coasters. No, I was on the theming side of things, building cool environments. So it was very important to me that it was a high-end set in that Pharaoh's Tomb or in the spaceship and the espionage adventure and the castle that we've done subsequently. You don't want to see a drywall screw in the wall. You don't want to have a sound artifact or a lighting artifact that makes you realize that you're in a shopping mall. Everything has to feel compelling, persuasive, like you're transported into an actual Egyptian tomb. And then in terms of the economics, this is one of the suggestions I give frequently to aspiring escape room owners. You really have to build the spreadsheet and think through the model, because if your throughput is you have one room and 8 people an hour, and then you want to manually reset that for half an hour so you can sell 8 tickets every 90 minutes, what do you have to charge for those tickets to pay the bills? How do the economics of this really work? Exactly as you described, David, we want a sequential experience where most of the 5-Wits adventures can work on up to a 12-minute cycle time. So you can push it to 5 shows an hour, where a group of, pre-pandemic, up to 15 people can go in each adventure every 12 minutes. And as you said, the show control systems are intelligently keeping people apart in the experience and making it so that you don't know anybody else is in the adventure. You're moving through it linearly, but we get to use all of those rooms at once and not have a big, expensive stage set that's 3/4 vacant.
Makes sense. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe that I have played all of the 5-Wits games. The 4 that are currently available, Drago's Castle, Tomb, Espionage, and Deep Space, which are all fully automated, tech-driven experiences, as well as the 2 games that were closed at the Foxborough location, 20,000 Leagues, and a noticeably different version of Espionage, which were driven by a blend of technology and performers who served as guides through the game. First of all, have I actually played all of the games, or have I missed any?
No, that's the whole list. Yep.
Cool. Glad I've collected the whole set. What drove the change in approach and design philosophy from this hybrid of tech and performer to full automation?
To a great degree, the team's skill level, knowledge level. We started out with a guided experience with 2 beliefs. The live actor that was accompanying the group through the whole experience could add enough of a human element, helping the team where they needed help, confusing the team where they needed confusion, really playing into the full experience. And then technologically, I didn't know at that early stage, despite being an engineering school graduate, there's a big difference between what you know coming out of engineering school and how to build all of a modern high technology escape room, from controls and sensors and automation all the way down the list. And I didn't know how to do many of the games that I wanted to do in a fully automated fashion, where sensors and cameras and the stuff we use at Level 99 these days could fill the role of a human. So the guides in the original adventures, like the original Tomb and Espionage, 20,000 Leagues, they actually carried little magnets. The guides physically held a magnet in their pocket as they would go through the experience. And we had hidden in the walls in the rooms, in specified locations, magnet switches hidden behind the walls of the tomb, so that the guide could covertly control things, where Pharaoh is yelling at your group and saying, "I see you're cheating at that game. We had no sensor smart enough to know you were cheating at that game." The guide, who's pretending to be part of your group, sees that you're cheating at that game, holds their magnet up to the wall in the right place, and Pharaoh scolds the group.
That's brilliant.
So all different cues where the guide could actually play the role of Pharaoh through pre-recorded cues while they were going along with the group through the experience. As we've progressed over the years, we've gotten more technologically capable. We employ at this point quite a large team of mechanical engineers, software engineers, and we can do these things without human intervention. But back then it was my low-tech solution to a high-tech problem.
I love it.
That sounds pretty incredible. I noticed some of the other ways that you guys have for automating resets, which I thought were super clever, like even things that have physical pieces that say you have to hang on a wall. And I noticed you had a system where whatever was holding them up would retract into the wall and those pieces would all fall down again. So simple, but I thought it was so clever.
Those are the family jewels, PG. That's the good stuff where you figure out for each game, how do we make this thing reset without human intervention? Because of the cycle time you mentioned, David, that just makes it possible, right? one group goes into a room right behind another, you don't want to pay a staff member to go in and reset combo locks. You want it to flow continuously, more like an attraction at Disney World.
And cuts down on human error, too.
Since it no longer exists, are you open to explaining how the truly remarkable bomb scene in the original Espionage worked?
Sure. After the original Espionage had been open 11 years, we decided to shutter that one because it, in part, was still that old, what we call the guided model, right? So that requires you to have enough actors on staff ready to go to handle whoever might walk in the door. The automated model is much more successful financially. And to your point, BG, it's much more successful for consistency with guest experience. If guests have had a really great time in a guided show, it's because of their guide. And if they had a bad time, it's because of their guide. And as a business owner, you don't want anybody having a bad time because the guide is bored or tired or sick or having a bad day. You try to build a system that will give a consistently A+ grade product. So as we've moved to the guide-less model across the board, we closed Espionage. So yes, David, I'll share how the bomb worked. You were in, what was it, the 7th room of Espionage. That was a 9-room adventure that took about an hour to go through. In the 7th room of this spy mission, a bomb came up out of the table, and your group had to work together to defuse the bomb with time running out. It was kind of a space team type game where you're pushing the buttons and taking cues from each other and running around trying to get this thing diffused.
Just for frame of reference, this is a very large bomb table type setup. It's dominating the room.
Yeah, it looks like a scary thing to such a degree that when we had kids go through, some of them would basically, it's too real for them. The sets are very real. The bomb is very real. And adults get a kick out of that because they can separate reality. But a 7-year-old thinks they're going to die. And that can be a little bit too much. so we had to deal with that a few times, particularly in the case of this bomb, because this is, I think, the one game in 5-Wits history where, to give away the secret, it's rigged. You can't win. You cannot beat this game because of the theatrical effect that we want to have happen to you. So it was important in all of the 5-Wits designs. Typically, our rooms had 2 or 3 puzzles each, and you progress to the next room. But we also wanted in each room a special effect, a wow moment, an amazing visual, a theme park level. Wow, look at that. Because that really drives engagement, and it's what people go home talking about.
And these things are always late in the game also.
Yeah, there's always a big finale effect at a 5-Wits adventure where you want something really cool to happen at the end that kind of feels like a close-up magic trick a little bit. Tomb ended with a mummy magnetically floating down from the ceiling into his sarcophagus in the original Tomb. And this Espionage adventure ends with an explosion. So your bomb is ticking down. You've got 10 seconds left. The sirens are blaring. The lights are whirling. You realize you're not going to be able to defuse it in time. Again, it's because we've rigged the game. No matter how well you play, it stays a little bit ahead of you. So your guide is like, we're going to die. We got to get out of here. And these big, heavy blast doors open on one side of the room, and your guide gets the group out of the room. As those blast doors are closing, you're looking through at the bomb ticking down, 5, 4, 3. And we stretch the time on the bomb. We know where the people are in the room. So it will not necessarily tick once per second. It will tick at exactly the right speed that catches you every time, where those blast doors are just closing as it's 3, 2, 1, boom, the bomb goes off. The room you're in shakes, the lights go out, couple of seconds of darkness, and then the emergency generators kick in and the emergency lights come on in the room. And now you've got to solve a puzzle that really is distracting you from the effect that's going on. You've got to solve a puzzle involving fuse boxes on the walls where you move fuses from one place to another, ostensibly to restore power and get things running. But that is a distraction from the fact that this bomb-proof bunker you're in, we've built on a large theatrical turntable. And we slowly spin the room that you're in 180 degrees. And if you ramp that motion up slowly enough and spin at a slow rate, it took us about 3 minutes to spin this group around so that you used to be facing south, but now you're facing north. You get the fuse game done, you get everything finished, those blast doors open, and you're looking back into the bomb room. It's exploded, it's destroyed, because we've built a duplicate of the original bomb room, but this one is post-explosion.
It looks wrecked.
Yeah, the room is trashed. There's smoke in the air. There's holes in every surface. The screens are flickering. The lights are falling from the ceiling. And where the bomb was in the center of the room is a big crater. And then the show reaches its grand finale as you discover who the bad guys were and what happened. And you finished your last puzzle and you're out. That's the type of theatrical thing we love to really layer onto what you might consider a more conventional escape room experience.
I was such a big fan of that moment. I don't know if it's possible, but if you have any photos that you could share, I would love to be able to include those in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, I can send you a couple of those.
Thanks. We're taking a moment to thank our sponsor, Morty. Morty is a free app for discovering, planning, tracking, and reviewing your escape rooms and other immersive social outings. And Morty is now available for all to use on its brand new web experience, in addition to its fantastic iPhone app. I believe in Morty so much that I have a stake in it as an advisor. On our Montreal escape room tour, one of our newer enthusiasts came up and asked me, why are people tracking their escape rooms? I didn't know that I was supposed to be making a list. And it's funny because it was one of those questions I hadn't contemplated in a long time. But the truth is that a lot of us track our rooms partially so that we don't accidentally replay a game. We also keep track just so that we have that list there to jog our memory. The longer you play, the more of these things you play, the harder it is to keep all of it straight. But you go down that list, and all of a sudden the memories come rushing back. I know that I don't really use my escape room list for much of anything other than to refresh my memory. And so many times I have gone down that list and just been delighted to revisit some of the wonderful times I have had in escape rooms with my friends. And Morty is the easiest way to assemble that list.
Or you're like me, I treat it like playing Pokemon. Gotta catch them all.
You can learn more at mortyapp.com/repod. That's REPOD to sign up and get a special badge for our listeners. Link and details are in the show notes.
5 Wits, at least in New York, exists entirely in malls owned by Pyramid Management Group. How did that relationship emerge?
All of our New York locations are in Pyramid malls. Interestingly, the other locations are not. It happens that Pyramid owns a lot of malls in New York. Boy, interestingly, so there was a young leasing rep. His name was Joe. Joe called 5 Wits Productions, our production company, one day, having seen 5 Wits in Boston and seen 5 Wits at Patriot Place in Foxborough, Mass. He called the front desk and there was nobody there to answer the phone at the moment. I was walking by, so I picked up the phone. And Joe said, I love your stuff. I was at Patriot Place. This is really amazing. We have a bunch of malls and would love to see your product come to one of them. And I said, all right, yeah, let's have a meeting. What I came to find out some years later, as Joe and I were friends, he was a leasing rep at Pyramid Malls for many years. I was his first cold call at the beginning of his process as a leasing rep. His first cold call, he just happened to call the right number at the right time. He's like, the CEO answered the phone directly. I got a meeting on my first call and it led to a signed lease. I'm going to be rich. This is awesome. I'm going to lease to everyone under the sun.
This job is easy.
Yes, exactly. Years later, I'm talking to Joe and he says, my next 1,000 cold calls, no one called me back. You were my first one and it just happened to hit. So Wow. It was just so funny.
Got lucky.
We worked that through in Syracuse, West Nyack, Albany, Buffalo, where Pyramid has successful malls in each of those locations. And they came to know us not only as a cool product provider, but as a solid operator, which matters a lot to a big landlord, that you do what you say you're going to do and can be depended on. So they've been a partner to us as we've opened more locations.
What are some of the key factors that you look for when you're scouting out locations, and what do you look for in a landlord? And are you determined to keep staying in malls?
I'll answer the last question first. No, We're not determined to stay in malls. The first Five Wits location was not in a mall. It was on the street, so to speak, in the Fenway in Boston. Malls offer a couple of advantages over street real estate and also some disadvantages. But the advantages may be more of a critical mass of guaranteed foot traffic. If you're not hugely destination based yet, people don't know you exist. Effectively, you're paying some rent as marketing. You're paying some rent to let people know you exist and walk by your storefront and ask your staff, hey, what is this place? Is this cool? And you can use rent as a surrogate for marketing dollars in your early days. Landlords also have more resources. I should say mall landlords have more resources. If you're going into a small storefront in Boston, that landlord mainly cares about your rent. How much money am I going to get out of this tenant? Whereas if you go into a mall, often they care about the mix. They care about the foot traffic being driven to the mall. They care about their other tenants being happy. And if you can justify as an entertainment tenant, if you can show them your data and how many people you're bringing, you can get a good deal. You can get the landlord to really act as a partner in your relationship as opposed to being entirely focused on collecting rent.
Over the years, you have been pretty clear that Five Wits is not an escape room company. I'm curious what you think the difference between Five Wits and an escape room is, why it would or wouldn't be.
It's two things. And one that I bet we'll all agree on and one that we won't is my suspicion. So you can tell me if I'm wrong. One is we don't follow what I might call the classic escape room model, right? You're not locked in a room for 60 minutes and trying to solve everything in time and lose if you don't. We have no padlocks in any shows of our adventures. It's closer, I would say, to a theme park type adventure experience, like you're inside a movie. And we are typically making it such that you're going to see every puzzle, you're going to get through the whole experience, you're going to get to have every special effect. You might not win, you might not see the ideal outcome. There's a big logical branching path of forks and options that you can see based on some of it's randomly generated, like who the villain might be in a certain scenario. And some of it is really based on your performance. If you're beating certain puzzles effectively, it affects how fast you're going through the experience. It affects some of the dialogue that you're going to hear. It affects difficulty of puzzles. We're dynamically balancing things to a greater degree. So everybody's going to get through the experience and have a good time. But if you're a really puzzling aficionado, you're an escape room master, you're going to have a harder experience, a more detailed experience. You're going to see more content than somebody who is just muddling their way through and figuring it out for the first time. But we want them to have a great time too. So a little different maybe than an escape room. That's the first way I would say.
And the second one?
The second way, to speak plainly, is, boy, how do you put it delicately? Many escape rooms stink. Many of them don't. Many of them are awesome. But particularly in the beginning years, right, when Five Wits saw the beginnings and then subsequently an explosion of escape room offerings, at that point, we had gotten pretty sophisticated, I would say, at what we were doing and high quality sets and controls. And people were opening down the street with a white drywall box and a couple of desk chairs and a pine box on the desk with a padlock on it, and charging the same price as us. And somebody would go on the internet with no experience and no idea and say, well, there's this Five Wits thing and there's this escape room thing, and they look the same to me. Which one do I pick? And we would even hear stories of people who went to that crappy escape room down the block and are like, no, I'm not going to try Five Wits. I've done that. It stinks. I'm like, no, you haven't done it. These are not comparable experiences. So early on, I would say, before the escape room industry had grown to the level where it is now, particularly, we wanted to differentiate and say, no, we're not solve a padlock on a pine box. This is a whole nother level. Now I recognize there are some, still I would say not the majority, but there are some in the escape room world doing a much higher quality job, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I've gone on a journey myself trying to figure out whether Five Wits is an escape room. And in the early days, and in my early reviews, the ones that Lisa and I wrote, we didn't think that Five Wits was an escape room. And some of that was just a lot of the things that you were listing. Some of it was, if I'm being blunt, a little bit rattled by the production value and the realization that a lot of companies that were making a product that we enjoyed, could not keep up. Over time, I think that the concept of what is an escape room has broadened quite a bit in a lot of positive ways. I think the level of quality is a lot higher than it was in 2015, back when we first played 5 Wits. Even the low end is generally better than it was. Not categorically, there's still some disaster games out there.
Well, the really bad ones don't survive.
Yeah.
In the same way that they used to. You can't survive on novelty alone anymore.
No. And a lot of the really bad ones that have managed to survive are actually chains, and they have an economy of scale going on that allows them to sustain. But these days, I don't really mentally differentiate 5 Wits games from just other good escape rooms. In my mind, there's certainly still differences, but I used to kind of just think of 5 Wits as on a similar spectrum as escape rooms, and now I don't know that I have the same differentiation. I just mentally group it with other experiences that exist in the higher end of this field.
Yeah, the production value, the spectacle has just exploded drastically. Most people are not locked in a box. Most people are not escaping from anything. A lot of them really do feel like adventures at a theme park. But I do think that there is still a lot of that type of stereotype that persists. Like when we went to Vegas and we spoke at an immersive summit, the basis of our whole talk was that escape rooms are immersive spectacles, or they can be. And a lot of the people there had the same biases. These were like immersive theater people, and they thought, oh, escape rooms are like for kids, or they're just puzzles in a box with locks. And I think a lot of them did not know really how much the scene and the industry has advanced as a whole.
Well, there was a lot of, and there still is, I think, an ethos in escape rooms that kind of flows along the haunted house lines of, I can build this myself. I can be a hobbyist. And because I've gone to a dozen escape rooms and I think they're awesome, so I'm going to build one. And at the beginning, you could actually do that, I think, and be successful. And the bar has lifted. The bar is higher. And if you don't know what you're doing in terms of design, in terms of technology, in terms of marketing, in terms of business, and you try to do that today, you're going to get killed.
And that has really been reflective of the data, both the open data and the closed data. We don't see the same number of companies opening, and we don't see the same number of unprepared companies opening, which I think was a lot of the problems we had, was that amount of unprepared companies. Rezova is your all-in-one, all-inclusive software for bookings made specifically with escape rooms in mind. Incorporating community-driven features, it's designed to follow the guest journey, from selecting times to book, waiver management, integrated point-of-sale system, and follow-up emails. Rezova is the ultimate online reservation software designed to elevate the guest experience, increase game master efficiency, drive sales, and improve operations. PG, I know your latest escape room trip has really made you acutely aware of when a company is using Rezova. Tell me about that.
All right, so David, I was planning my escape room trip up to Canada, Toronto, Montreal, Quebec City, and I'm booking escape rooms, right? We're playing a lot of rooms. And so it's kind of difficult to look through and make sure I'm booking the rooms and getting the timings right. And I was getting really frustrated because a lot of the companies out there, they have the booking times for all of the games on different website pages. And I was having to flip back and forth to try to make sure I could arrange the schedule properly. I came across one company and the layout was perfect for what I needed. They had all of their games listed on one page for the day that I wanted to play, with all of the times very clearly labeled. And it was so incredibly useful. I could have kissed them. And I scrolled to the bottom of the page, and at the very bottom, it said, powered by Rezova. And I was so delighted and I was so thrilled that we have them as a sponsor, because I truly found this booking page so simple, so intuitive to use, but mostly it was incredibly helpful for my planning needs.
This is what happens when you vet your sponsors.
We actually didn't even plan on recording this ad, but I was so happy with it that I made David come on and record a new spot for them. That's that's how happy it made me.
Completely true. To learn more, get a free demo, and find out how easy Rezova can make your transition to their technology, head over to rezova.com/REA and be sure to use our link or drop our name, because as a thank you to Repod listeners, Rezova is offering up to $100 in Google AdWords when you sign up through our link. Details in the show notes. Before we move on from 5Wits, I have one other question for you. On our 2022 tour to New Orleans and Baton Rouge, we took 50, 60 people down there for a whole bunch of great games. On that trip, I replayed the iconic 13th Gate game, Tomb of Anubis. And at the time, I had just replayed Tomb at 5Wits twice in West Nyack.
Once was with me.
Yep. I realized that their Pharaoh voice is the very same recording as the Pharaoh from Tomb at 5Wits. This doesn't bother me. There's no pitchforks here, but I am really curious to hear the backstory about this.
And literally no one else would notice this but David.
Yes.
I can tell you that very few people have ever brought that up to me. So first, I have never been to Baton Rouge and have never played 13th Gate myself, to my own disappointment. I would love to, just haven't gotten there. They were developing a Egyptian Pharaoh's Tomb adventure and reached out and said, hey, we're doing some great work on this. And there's a lot of parallels to the work you've done. So much so that this speech that your Pharaoh gives would actually set up our experience really well. We could hire an actor and record it and go our own way with it, but we really like yours. Can we license it? And I thought about that for a small amount of time, because part of that is like, oh, am I giving away a portion of my soul? And it was like, no, they're going to do their own thing and they're going to do a high quality job with it. Whether I help them or not, might as well be helpful. And we licensed them the track.
Makes sense. I do think it works well. The only reason that I can't imagine there are very many people who could have picked up on that, the inflection of Pharaoh in that is very particular. I am Pharaoh, that booms. And
that's really good, David. Do you do voice talent if we need an actor for the next version?
I'm happy to do it.
We call that actor Pharaoh Mike, because Pharaoh was the first role he did for us. But if you look carefully to give you a puzzle, David, blow your mind a little more, you'll find that Mike plays, I think, 4 different roles across multiple 5Wits adventures. He wasn't just Pharaoh. So if you can detect him in other 5Wits adventures, let me know. That would be impressive.
I will keep an ear out next time I'm there. I'll ask you one more thing about 5Wits before we move on. There are a couple of Easter eggs in 5Wits games. I'm aware of one in Tomb, and I'm aware of one in Drago's Castle. Are there others? And I'm just curious if there's a backstory or an intention behind the Easter eggs.
Yes, there are Easter eggs in 5Wits adventures. And I guess the reason, well, it's too far. To be honest, the real reason is a software developer late at night, kudos to you, Ben, if you're listening, being bored enough to say, wouldn't it be really hilarious if this certain sequence of events caused that? Some of these came about by my direction. Most of them do not. Most of them come about by our staff saying, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And I kind of find out about it later.
That's classic Easter eggs in video games also.
Yeah, and it's great for the loyalists, the fans who have been back to 5Wits adventures enough times. It's another layer to discover, and I love that.
It brings me joy. All of the times that I have played Drago's Castle, I have triggered the Easter egg at the end of that every single time.
And you can ask one of the staff to help you trigger it at the end, which is, I think, what we did when I went to go play it. So for any listeners out there, now you know.
As long as they're not too busy, they'll do it for you.
Inside secrets. I love it.
Let's move on to Level 99. In 2021, you opened Level 99 in the Natick Mall in Massachusetts, a little outside Boston, which, for those unfamiliar, this is a 48,000 square foot complex featuring challenge-based games and fantastic food and drink. For listeners who haven't been to Level 99, it's different, but playing in a similar space as Bodeborg, which was featured in Season 4, Episode 10, when we had interviewed their CEO, David Spigner. But Level 99 certainly has a different approach. I'm curious, how do you explain Level 99 to folks?
Oh, golly, you put me on the spot with that one. We've been open almost 2 years and are still really trying to distill it. The challenge, and as I give tours on a weekly basis of Level 99, we're bringing in potential partners or new landlords or employees, and everybody walks through and says, this is more than I expected. So I'm going to do a terrible job of verbally describing it. And anybody who actually shows up can tell me if I did an adequate enough job or if it's more than you expected. So Level 99 is a world of challenges. As you said, 48,000 feet. This used to be a Sears department store. The place is very large. We have 50 different challenges that are each on the scale of some escape rooms. 43 of them are rooms. 7 of them are what we would call duels or arena games, a challenge out in the public square that people can be spectators to and watching while it's happening. And we have a whole lot of local art where we've commissioned local artists in the Boston area to produce individual pieces that decorate the space. But I would say that the core of the concept is those 43 rooms. That's the driver, I would say, for most people. And each room is a short 1 to 4 minute physical or mental challenge, ranging from a classic escape room style mental puzzle to a American Ninja Warrior level obstacle course type physical challenge. And many of the rooms, I think where Level 99 shines the best, combine the two, where you're using your mind, you're using your body, you're using communication with your team, a lot of skill-based games, your accuracy is a factor. And in each of these rooms, you're playing in a team, so cooperative, like an escape room, small group of 2 to 6 players, and you go into a room, scanning your RFID bracelet at the door, building your team, and in you go, presented with an unknown challenge that was behind a locked door. It could be a very physical game, a very mental game, a combination, and you're on the clock. The screen is counting down, and it's really only a couple of minutes to try to solve what is in front of you. You're almost certainly going to fail your first time through, because these are not trivial. You're going to break a rule. Maybe the room has a floor is lava type construct, and you have to realize that you're doing things up off the ground. And okay, we weren't as successful as we wanted to be our first try. Out you go, right back around, scan in, build the same group or a new group, and try again. And in each room, like a level of a video game or the mobile app that you're addicted to in your pocket, you're earning a measure of success. You might get a 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star level outcome based on how well you perform. You're accumulating digital assets. Your on-screen emblem, your avatar, your depiction of yourself is getting cooler as you unlock more features and grow. There's a whole meta game and economy that ties the place together where, again, you're collecting digital currencies that are useful in different ways. So you're playing essentially an open world style video game where you're free to roam through this space, take on whatever short challenge is next. Some people want to play each of the 50 challenges once and then dig in. Other people, the completionists like me, will play the same room 20 times in a row until they've achieved mastery and then move on. And there's 600 people in the space doing this at once with you simultaneously. Absolute fun, raucous madness as you work together to beat these different puzzles.
I think it's a good description. I also very much agree with you that Level 99 is at its best when the challenges are a hybrid of mental and physical, at least for myself. I've logged a lot of hours at Level 99, considering it's a few hundred miles away from me. My name in your system is Admiral Squid. I think I'm at level 115.
Admiral Squid, that's a good one. That's a funny story there, David.
Yeah, I'm curious. How did that happen? How did these two-word names?
How did you get to be Admiral Squid? Yes, we considered, like most video games, you got to name yourself. Like, that's obvious. You want to be represented on the leaderboards. You have an identity. And we thought about how we would do that. And oh boy, well, if we're going to put it up on a display in the store, we can't have people putting up inappropriate language on our leaderboards. And boy, it's actually really hard to sort out technologically all the potential ways that clever people could put bad words on the screen, because there are a lot of misspellings and phonetic spellings and
languages.
Yeah, of putting up things that we would rather not have on the big billboard. So we said, all right, we'll solve that later while we're playtesting and like working on the early version of this. We'll just have a list of a few hundred adjectives and a few hundred nouns, and we'll assign you one. We'll give you a first name and a last name that are from our curated list so that things tend to come out funny and things tend to come out obviously appropriate. And then we started playtesting, and people said, I'm Admiral Squid. Holy crap, that's awesome. Early on, before your presence was persistent and you would log in as your same self and continue growing, when we were not open yet, but we were just testing, we'd give you a new random name and people would be mad. Wait a minute, I'm Admiral Squid. You need to give me my same name. So we were like, boy, we really have something here. People think this is funny. They would gather around each other at account creation and see what random name each person got assigned and laugh about it. People were very loyal to their names. So we said, hey, we don't need to change this. This is a win.
Yeah, it's like you guys took the best parts from so many different fun games. That feels a little bit like your character sheet from D&D, where you're accumulating your stats and you're growing the different items that you've collected. And that's a super fun part. I love how you described it as an open world video game, because I definitely think of it as having parts of like Mario Party where there's a lot of mini games, mini challenges. I love games that are collecting, scavenging games like Animal Crossing or something like that. And you have elements of that where you mentioned having the artwork. And so there's a lot of different games around collecting and identifying different types of artwork that fall within a category. It feels like a scavenger hunt. I really enjoyed that part of it too, like having these things that occupy your time while you're waiting for a room.
That's exactly the intent, PG. That warms my heart so much to hear you say that. It's designed to just be a wild collection of these very cool mini games that we're deliberately pushing in very different directions to have a huge variety in the space. The actual legal name of the business, if you look it up in the city records, Level99 is our doing business as public-facing name. The legal name of the business is Open World Entertainment, because that's exactly the intention, is this idea that you are the captain of your own fate. Admiral Squid, you can explore at your own free will and do what you want to do next. Some people are really into the physical, some are into the mental, some are into the arena games and the competitive stuff, some are into the cooperative stuff. You set your own path.
Now, there are some very clear points of similarity between 5-Wits and Level99, but we wanted to hear, how do you go from one to the next? What drove this very different approach to immersive entertainment?
A good question. I think that's probably a small novel of an explanation because it's a few years of thought.
We'll take the high notes.
All right, we'll do the super short version. The super short version is like any person who's built an escape room or another type of attraction like 5-Wits, you learn things. You do things wrong. 5-Wits, I think we got enough right to be a successful business, but boy, did we get some things wrong. We've already talked about how our model has changed in terms of guided versus unguided, in terms of automation levels. I mean, we started with only one adventure in a venue and we've moved to multiple. I could list 100 things that my first guess at what was right for 5-Wits didn't work out, wasn't the right choice. We've learned. And a whole bunch of those notes can be applied to a model like 5-Wits and can make that a better business. And some of them are so divergent that they justify their own business, that they justify their own concept, that they head in a different enough direction that we don't want to blow up what 5-Wits is. We want to have a parallel path. And Level99 was building on 20 years of learning at 5-Wits, from a more open world format instead of a linear on Rails format, to higher levels of physicality, to a small group experience, to, again, I think I could list 100 things that are like, if I were doing it again, we'd do it this way. We did Level99. We got to do it again.
You've also increased capacity and removed a lot of logistics in terms of booking and all of the management and staff that's required for running each individual game. There's a lot of upsides that I see.
So many escape room owners will say, what? A 5 wits? You can have 100 people an hour go through? Like, that's amazing. I can do 20. That would make the economics so different. That is such a driver on peak days that we said 100 isn't enough. When we design an attraction for Disney, which Boxfort, my production company, has worked on some of those projects, they're not even going to talk to you if an attraction can't do 2,000-3,000 people an hour. Like, those are the throughput levels of a Disney World. We were like, okay, well, we're not Disney World. We're not going to get to that scale. But Level 99 right now operates at 600 simultaneous players, and another 250 people can be eating. So the ability to have 850 people on a Saturday in there at once, and you're turning that over multiple times during the day, well, now the economics work.
And there's replayability too. I think that's the biggest factor is you can go back and play. You can go once and be like, this is amazing. And now I'm trying to talk my entire family into making a trip to Boston. I'm like, I'll go back just to play these games again.
That is a huge differentiating factor too. Most escape rooms, even the great ones that I really enjoy, I don't typically play more than once. I kind of feel like I've seen it. I've beaten the puzzles or not beaten the puzzles, but I've had the experience. I move on to the next thing. And we wanted to build something that would really drive repeat play. The average player right now is spending about 30 hours to get through just the initial content at Level 99 in Natick, and we're about to update some rooms.
Speaking of the players, what is the most surprising thing that you have learned about players in the past year?
Oh, goodness. That's probably a list right there, too. Perhaps, PG, how difficult that question is to answer because of how different people are. We have players who will come into the venue, and the first room that they play, they will want to play dozens of times until they've mastered it. And then the next group comes into the venue and plays a room once and says, that was cool, let's check out the next one. We have players who come into the venue and say, that room was really too hard. I didn't understand what was going on. The rules were confusing to me. I didn't know what to do. That was frustrating. And the next group will go into that room and say, boy, we really had to figure that out. That was so rewarding to puzzle through that. I love how you obfuscated what was going on there. That was really gratifying. We have groups who come in and say, oh, I can't do monkey bars. I haven't been able to do monkey bars since I was 7. Why would I want to play a room like that? And the next group says, that was so awesome. Can you believe they did that? So the range of, we're trying to do something, I think, a little bit more ambitious with Level 99 and check a very wide array of boxes.
I imagine there have been rooms that you have put into Level 99 that have failed. What makes a game fail with an audience that is as diverse as what you just described?
I love a room that fails, and I love a room that's a wild success. The ones that drive me nuts, David, are the ones in between. So we can talk about that in a second.
As a reviewer, I very much feel the same way. I would rather write about something that blew my mind. I'd rather write about something that I thought was an utter disaster. The ones that are running straight up the middle, they're fine. There's nothing really right with them and there's nothing really wrong with them. Gosh, those are torture for us to review.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. And it is similar for us trying to evaluate our own work. You often get tunnel vision in the design process, and it's very easy for the team to convince themselves how successful a game is going to be, how a challenge is going to work. So first off, what all of your escape room designers that listen to you know is the importance of playtesting, that you can't trust your own opinions. You can't know what's going to be successful until you've put it in front of the public. We were testing a revision to a game, 2 weeks ago, and we put through half a dozen teams of Boxfort folks. Boxfort is the name of our internal design build team. And the way each of those teams, I'm just kind of standing at the back of the room watching, and the way each of those teams played was very thoughtful. They're figuring out what's going on. They're communicating with each other. They're courteous to one another, saying, all right, so we figured out it's the yellow one. Do you want to do it or shall I? And we learned from them for an hour. And then we said, okay, we're in Level 99. It's during business hours. We're just going to open the door and take in some random folks.
Bring in the barbarians.
Oh my goodness, barbarians is the word. We brought in a group of maybe 20-year-olds they started throwing stuff around the room like they were trying to destroy the place. They did not communicate with each other in any way. They did not verbalize any thoughts about the puzzle that was going on. They just tried to play it as fast as possible. And they muddled through, but boy, we were like, wow, was that just a strange group? Let's bring in another group. Same thing. Like they were playing at a different pace than the box fort people. So we're like, okay, we need to recalibrate how we're thinking about the guests experiencing this room. We've designed it for this level of thought, and they're going to use this level of thought. We got to test a lot more and figure out where the reality is. But yes, to answer your initial question, of the 50 challenges in Natick, there's a good, I would say a handful that we've said, nope, these are busts. Either it's not fun, it's too confusing, it's too physically strenuous, it's too obscure and mentally confusing. There's a safety issue where there's too many twisted ankles in the room because of the physicality. We want to solve for this. We'll often close the room, have to evaluate, are we re-engineering this from scratch, which we've done a few times, completely gutting it, rebuilding, or are we essentially modifying what we have and figuring out a way to turn this into a better game? That's easier to modify in the middle case to make a B into an A. Sometimes when you have a C, you just need to cut bait and start over.
That makes sense. On a related note, as someone who is business oriented, how do you deal with the situations where really creative ideas are crushed by the reality of budget?
You're calling me business oriented there, David? Is that kind of an insult that's like thinly veiled? Is that what's...
You know, it's funny. Sometimes I would use that phrase as an insult, but I would not with you.
Thank you. I'll take that.
It's very clear to me that you are constructing a product for humans that has a strong business model underpinning it. Whereas I think the feeling that I have with sometimes what I describe as MBA think is, well, let's start with the optimization and then figure out how we can go and make something that maybe people will consume.
Yeah. Here's the thing. That is such a delicate balance that many people miss one side or the other of. And if you are the world's best puzzle designer, building amazing props in your garage, and have no idea how to lease a space, how to hire a team, how to get yourself recognized on the internet, how to run a business, you're going to have a real tough time. And in the same way, the folks who are like, this attraction, this is my key to millions, I'm going to be rich, this is all about the money, and product comes last, user experience comes last, let's optimize the spreadsheet first, they're going to have a really hard time. You need to recognize that your product is what makes people come. But if you haven't thought about what you're charging, how you're promoting, things like throughput drive me the most nuts with an escape room, because many escape room owners don't seem to think about that till they've been open for 6 months. And they're like, hey, we're finally busy on Saturdays. Oh, crap, how do we get more people in here? And it's like, if you didn't have a plan for a way that you could feasibly make enough money, even on your peak days, to pay your rent, shame on you. You know, like that's just foolishness. Of course, you're going to go out of business. So I do have a business approach, I would say, to things. You have to bump great ideas against reality. But often you examine your menu, you look at your options. This morning, we were redlining the engineering drawings for a new cluster of rooms that's about to go into our second location. And we were literally considering, I'll give you the very specific example. This is a cluster of rooms on a crystal theme. And there's a very cool elven fortress palace type room where there's glowing crystal gems throughout. It's like, okay, how do we make these things? We could hand carve giant blocks of acrylic into individual crystals and embed LEDs in them and control those and light it from within. And okay, that's probably going to be expensive. Or at the other end of the spectrum, we could put plywood cutouts of gems on the walls and call it done. And the team brainstormed a dozen options in between. You could light it this way. You could build it this way. We could use this material. How about we 3D print them out of resin? No, I think we should use polycarbonate. No, like a long, detailed design discussion. And then you have to weigh that against the dollars. Boy, to make this absolutely amazing looking version would cost $100,000 on one room. it breaks the model. We don't want to spend that on all the rooms. We're not going to be able to pay the rent. It doesn't work. But boy, if we build this out of cardboard, it's going to look terrible and nobody's going to come. So there's very often on those two curves, if you picture kind of an XY graph, if you will, I'll nerd out for a second. There's a range of quality and there's a range of cost. And those are not linearly related. You don't get a 10 out of 10 for quality at a 10 out of 10 for cost and a 1 at a 1. It is an arc. It's a curve. And very often there's an inflection point where we would talk about bang for the buck. Where can I pay a 5 to get a 7? Where can I pay for a 3 to find the way to do it that's a 9? Yes, I can't afford a 10, but if I can get a 9 for the price of a 3, and in order to do that, you have to have a savvy enough team that knows all the options and can create that graph in your head and make good value engineering choices.
This is the way that we do our decision making on our various productions as well, is not how do you make the best, how do you make the best that makes sense. How do you go about defying player expectations? What's your approach to this?
Well, some of it is, we've talked a little bit about the history, 5 Wits and Level 99. Some of it is by building things that don't exist. I've just never been interested in saying, oh, look, all these escape rooms are successful, so I should rent a storefront downtown and put some padlocks in it and make it be an hour long and you have to unlock them all to get out in time. I have no interest in that because somebody's done it, to speak plainly. So I don't know of anything like 5 Wits when it started. There are some analogs. I would say you noted Bodeborg. David Spigner is a friend. There's other concepts like that, some of which that have come out since Level 99 opened in the last 2 years, some of which have been open for years. Boy, I could rattle off a list. There's Prison Island that has 50 plus locations in Europe. There's Beat the Bomb, Activate, Hijinks Hotel in Australia. Time Mission has a couple of locations now. Fair Game and Crystal Maze in the UK. There was Jumble in the Middle East. The Grid down at Area 57. There's Cosio in France. There are people all playing around the edges of this, but I do what the guest wants me to do, what the market is calling for, not what somebody else has already built. When you think about them in isolation, you solve for each of the problems, and each of the problems leads to a new model. That's what 5 Wits was. And then even learning from our own mistakes, that's what Level 99 is.
Every new venture has its own set of unexpected difficulties. What were some of the things that have proven surprisingly challenging with the rollout of Level 99?
Oh boy, food and beverage is challenging to do at the level we're trying to do it. So David introduced us by saying it was great food. We want to execute food at a level most location-based entertainment venues don't do it at all. And if you think about the ones that you're most familiar with that do it, what comes to mind? You're thinking of pizza at Chuck E. Cheese, right? You're thinking of a burger at Dave & Buster's. This is not aspirational food. This is not food that you want to go and eat. Level 99 food is food you want to eat. We won Best Pizza in Boston from Boston Magazine a few months back. We have a scratch kitchen. Nothing is off the back of a truck and thrown in a fryer-later from out of a Cisco wagon. Everything is hand done. We're making our own pizza doughs. We're making our own chicken. We're doing everything at a level, frankly, that you would expect in a high-level restaurant. And we've partnered with Night Shift, an amazing local New England craft beer brand, and have really put together a place that 1/3 of the folks who eat with us are coming for the food. They're not even playing with us. They're just there to eat. The food is at that level.
Lisa and I were often persuading friends to come with us to go to Level 99. And a big part of the pitch is you really like craft beer. Come here. They have Night Shift. And that pitch in and of itself has been enough to convince people to come along with us. People who, if we had said, hey, come along, we're going to a good escape room, they might go and say, I don't know, I'm probably not going to go. They've come with us to Level 99 and then had a really good time playing the games.
So I started off asking what was the challenge, and you started off by talking about the food. What was it about the food that you found challenging? Was it just finding the right menu? Was it implementing it, going from experiences to now having to run a kitchen and bar? Is that the part that was tough?
Yes and yes. So developing the menu, we engaged an amazing professional chef, shout out to Tom, who spent over a year developing the menu, months with a dough consultant to get the crust right for our amazing Detroit-style pizza. These things It's a ton of work to develop. It's a ton of work to get to a level of repeatable quality where you systematize it to the point where it's consistent and folks are getting the A+ stuff every time. And it's a bigger team where a lot of the entertainment can be, to a great degree, automated. We're focusing on building systems that are self-resetting and that run themselves on the entertainment side of the business. You can't do that with scratch cooking. So there's a big team in the kitchen. There's a big wait staff. There's bartenders. There's management. At Level99 in Natick, the larger part of the team is on the food and beverage side of the business, not the entertainment side of the business.
You've alluded to the next Level99 location a couple of different times over the course of this interview. I am curious, can you share where that is?
This, I think, may be, if not the first, certainly one of the first public announcements of the opening location. We will be opening in Providence, Rhode Island in the fourth quarter of this year. We got our construction permits just earlier this month and are getting steel in and pouring concrete. This is a much larger scale project. We're starting with some structural steel and pouring new floors and getting a high level build process going. Over the summer, the Box Fort team will be installing roughly 50 challenges, some brand new, some repeats of the greatest hits from the Natick location. And in fact, at the same time, we're going to have some new content going into Natick as that content moves to Providence. So both locations will have fresh stuff to see before the end of this year.
Fantastic. I cannot wait to play it.
Exciting. Matthew, any plans to bring it to the West Coast anytime soon?
It's on the docket. It's obviously easier when we can drive, but once you get on a plane, it doesn't really matter, so to speak. If you're a 2-hour flight or a 3-hour flight, we have expansion in mind. The Natick location, we opened at the tail end of the pandemic, been open not quite 2 years, and it really has captured imaginations, I think. And we're seeing great economic performance, great attendance, great reviews. So the goal is to bring this fun type of entertainment to more people.
That sounds fantastic. So what is the best way for people to follow your work or to connect with you?
Our websites, 5-wits.com, level99.com, are great resources. I'm actually, this might be strange since I'm sitting here on a wonderful podcast with you all, but I'm a relatively private person. I don't actually do social media. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have an Instagram account. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and very happy to have conversations. I mean, I've probably talked with or consulted for or just plain friendly helped out, I would say, on the order of 100 different escape room startups over the years. Don't mind having those conversations. Those are great fun for me to pass on some of the mistakes we've made and help other people not make them. If you want to see more about the experiences, check out Go Level99 on TikTok, where our social media team has some amazing videos up, and it'll give people really a better visual, better idea of what this experience is.
Matt, thank you so very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy chatting with you and hearing your perspective, and it's been really fun bringing that conversation to a broader audience.
Thanks. I've enjoyed it too.
The Reality Escape Pod is produced by Lisa Spira. Music by Ryan Elder of RyanElderMusic.com. Edited by Steve Ewing of Stand Inside Media. And brought to you by RoomEscapeArtist.com. Your home for well-researched, rational, and reasonably humorous escape room and immersive gaming content and events. Our Patreon is the backbone. It is the foundation. It is the thing that allows us to put in all of the time, care, and money that we invest into creating podcasts like this and all of the daily content that Room Escape Artist creates.
David and I have put a lot of work and thought into creating really awesome content for our Patreon supporters. Backing us at the $5 level gets you access to the RIA Discord. We have really fun conversations, discussions about escape rooms, immersive experiences, and more. And it also gets you access to our bonus show. This is a companion show to our main episode, and it's usually a more casual chat with our guests and each other. These episodes are pretty long. They're another 40 to 60 minutes. So if you can't get enough of our content, you can get more of it here. And we also tend to get a little bit looser here as well. If you have been enjoying this podcast, we would really appreciate a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps us spread the word about Reality Escape Pod.
Thank you to our highest level Patreon backers: Breakout Games, Derek Tam, Olivier Escape, Escapism, Escaparium, Panic Room, Byron Delmonico, Josh Rosenfeld, Paula Swan, Rex Miller, Scott Olson, and the Ministry of Peculiarities. Thank you all so much for your ongoing support.
If you're into escape rooms, you should be at Recon. If you're into theme parks, you should be at IAPA. Meet the people. That's how I got my first job in the industry. And I started on a Disney project as the grunt, the engineer on Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge. The project manager and assistant project manager above me both quit in the same week, and I was magically promoted, thrown from the frying pan into the fire as the CEO of my little company came into the office and said, "You know more about the project than anyone else. Drive to Orlando tomorrow morning, pick up steel-toed boots on your way there. You've got to run this construction site. Try not to make a fool of yourself." And I walked into the construction trailer at 8 a.m. the next morning. 20 or 30 grizzled construction superintendents of the various trades. The first fellow I met told me how he wanted his coffee, and I had to tell him, "I'm not here to make your coffee. I know I'm 22 years old. I'm in charge of the project. Sit down and take some notes." And it didn't go well. It did not go well at all. And I got the crap kicked out of me for the next year and a half, doing a lot of the design, fabrication, construction work for Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge in Orlando. So the moral of the story to me is you might get beat up. Things may seem like they go really sideways for a bit, but it was that experience that A, taught me how to build themed environments, and B, the CEO of that company who said a couple of years later, "Hey, you saved that project for us even when you were a kid and didn't know anything. When you want to do something of your own, I want to be your first phone call." And he was the first investor in 5 Wits.